Have you been struggling with a nagging injury that left you depressed, defeated, and you thought you would have to defer the one time that you got selected for the race of your dreams? That is what Mary thought. And she got selected for the New York City Marathon lottery after she suffered a hamstring injury. And if you have ever had upper hamstring pain that has limited you from exercise, that provides like the stress relief from your busy family and work life, then you need to listen to Mary's story. From one adult onset runner to another, Mary is going to detail her journey in how she went from being depressed after she made the difficult decision to cancel running the Detroit Free Press Marathon a week before the race because her pain was so significant, to finding the exact steps to safely get back to running and crushing her marathon debut in New York. I have had the pleasure to witness Mary's transformation firsthand as her running physical therapist and coach through our Spark Healthy Runner signature coaching program. And Mary, like so many of the clients that I am fortunate enough to work with, is exactly why I am passionate about what I do today. So, Mary is such a gem, and you guys are going to love her. So, Mary, thank you for agreeing to share your story and your experience dealing with this stubborn injury, and then sharing really what you found most helpful overcoming this injury and making some amazing memories that you made in New York that will certainly last a lifetime. And if you're listening to this right now and you're currently battling an injury that has forced you to stop running, it is my hope that this provides you some inspiration, that it is possible to overcome your injury and get back to doing the thing that you love. I know it is scary. I know people feel defeated, but if you're like Mary, then you probably already have tried stopping running for a period of time, went to rehab, tried dry needling. Heck, you may have even hired a run coach, but the pain always seems to come back, or you can't get back to doing what you love to do before your injury. So, Mary, thank you so much for coming on to share your story.
Thank you very much for having me. I'm absolutely delighted to be here with you today. I've dreamed about this moment.
you're you're too funny.
I'm kind of not joking. No, I'm just go ahead. Go ahead. I'm very
So
happy to
Mary
be here.
has listened to the podcast before and has heard an episode or two, let's say. And
Pretty much all of
do
them.
you do you mind just starting out kind of telling people a little bit about yourself, like where you're from, what you do for a living, and like how you got into this whole running journey to begin with?
Yeah, that's a lot of information. So I will tell you that first of all, I live in Northeast Ohio. I'm in the Cleveland area, specifically Hudson, Ohio. I work out of Akron, Ohio. I own currently own my own medical practice. I'm a urogynecologist or urology gynecology. So it's a combination. I trained as an OBGYN for 4 years. Then I did a 3-year fellowship in urogynecology and pelvic reconstructive surgery. So I'm a GYN surgeon, and my job basically is I take women who have some sort of problem with their pelvic floor, whether it's urinary incontinence, prolapse, pain, recurrent bladder infections, you name it, anything that has to do with the pelvic floor. And I either help them medically or surgically overcome those problems. So um, I've been in practice. I graduated from fellowship in 2008, so about 15 years now, I believe. Yeah, 15 years. And how I became so now you want me to any okay.
Yeah, we could segue to your running journey because I
Mhm.
know it did start later in life, like my journey did.
Mhm. Well, so honestly, I've always sort of run, and I would say sort of run is that, I would go on bursts of okay, I'm gonna get fit, I'm gonna exercise, and right, like when I was pregnant, I would swim, and that would be like my obsession for however 9 months, and then with running, it would intermittently be there in the background, but I'd never ran more than 3 miles at a time, So the longest, I mean, I literally think before I started training for the Detroit Marathon a year and a half ago, the longest I'd ever run is 4 miles and at one time. And I kind of want to step back just a little bit to well, I'm going to step way back. When I was in medical school, my husband and I were both in medical school together, married in medical school, and he's always been a big runner. And he ran his first marathon, the Cleveland Marathon, when we were in med school, and then he ran the Chicago Marathon shortly after, like a year or two later, and he's run three more since. I think he did Cincinnati, Columbus, and the Akron Towpath Marathon in the national park here near us. And I never would have thought before I went and watched somebody run a marathon that it's actually fun to watch somebody run a marathon. It's incredibly exciting. You're running around trying to meet up with them. You're emotional because you know how hard they've worked to be in it, and you're just in awe and impressed by their physical prowess that they can actually endure. You know, this is an endurance sport that they can actually run that many miles. And it never occurred to me for many years that that would be something that I could do. And then over time, I've thought, I think on my bucket list, I want to run a marathon. You know, I saw my husband do five of them, and it always inspired me. And so that was always kind of in the back of my mind. So fast forward to 2020, I'm working really hard as a physician. I looked around, during the pandemic, and I saw people kind of sheltering at home with their kids and being safe in their houses and working from home. And my husband and I, as physicians, were still going out there. We were in the hospitals, we were in the office, and it was very stressful. And I think a lot of people saw an uptick in their drinking during that time, and my husband and I definitely did. So by the end of 2020, I was probably, in my mind, 30 pounds overweight. I was drinking every single night, at least one or two glasses of wine. I got to the point where I would be driving home from work and thinking, like, okay, am I going to drink tonight? Of course I'm going to drink tonight. Okay, am I just going to have one glass of wine? Am I just going to have two glasses of wine? Am I just going to have a martini and then maybe a glass of wine? And so I know this podcast isn't about alcohol cessation, but basically, this is kind of the start of my journey. So
Mhm.
I decided, I saw a friend post on Facebook that she had read the book This Naked Mind by Annie Grace. And it's sort of like the book about alcohol, like choosing how to limit alcohol or stop drinking altogether. But it's not like, if I went to an AA meeting, I'd probably be laughed off the podium or whatever, just because it wasn't necessarily a problem per se. It was a problem for me, but not like it wasn't interfering with anything other than, I guess, my personal health. And so I read the book, and I decided then and there, December 22nd, 2020, that I was going to stop drinking permanently. And I did. And so then, starting in 2021, I decided, okay, well, anytime I want to drink, I'm going to eat a brownie. Because I have to some sort of endorphin release, I didn't know it. I was just trying to survive. I mean, I wasn't white knuckling it by any means. Stopping drinking was actually a lot easier for me than I ever imagined, because I was always one of those people that said, I never want to drink so much that I can never drink again, that I have to stop and I have to go to I never wanted to be that person. And I always thought alcohol would be a part of my life in some way, shape, or form. But it turns out it was a lot easier to stop. But then I ate a lot of brownies that year. And by the fall of 2021, I was probably 50 pounds overweight. I mean, I gained like 15 or 20 pounds after I quit drinking, which was 100% the opposite thing that I thought was going to happen. Honestly, I thought I was going to stop drinking and the weight was going to just melt off of me and I was going to be glorious again like I was when I was 20, but it didn't happen. And so then I met up with some friends in the fall of 2021, and friends from residency. And one of the doctors that I was good friends with, she just looked at me and she was like, "It just doesn't seem like you. Like you don't seem like you should be 50 pounds overweight." And I didn't look bad, I still was athletic. I was still working out and everything, but it just wasn't quite right. So then I kind of got control of that, and I started to lose weight, and I lost about 50 pounds. I did lose 50 pounds by the spring of 2022. So now fast forward, to May of 2022, and I was working out. I was doing a lot of Peloton exercises or workouts, and one of the programs on Peloton was you can run outdoors. And I thought, gosh, I haven't run since before the pandemic. I was the only running that I did before the pandemic was at Orange Theory. You hop on the treadmill for whatever period of time, and I wouldn't call myself a runner because I ran at Orange Theory. That's part of the workout. So I decided you could run outdoors program, and it was very, very, very slow. Like, okay, so today we're gonna walk run for a mile or whatever, and they take you through pacing and form and cadence and all these things that I never actually knew about running because I'm not a runner. And I just all of a sudden was like, wow, I get it. Like, I get how my feet are supposed to be underneath me, not like stretched out in front of me, or I get how I'm supposed to keep my shoulders back and my chin up, and all these things that I just never knew about running. And so I got kind of excited. And at this point now, by the time I finished that 8-week program, I had maybe 50 miles under my belt running. So then I decided, being the brilliant person that I am, that I was going to do their road to 26.2, and I was going to do their marathon training program because, hey, this was so much fun. Why can't I run 26 miles? I can run 4 now. So I signed up for their road to 26.2 with a base of 50 miles, and I signed up for the Detroit Marathon, and I got really excited about it, and I followed the program to a T. Everything that they said to do, I did. I didn't miss a single workout for 18 weeks. I did everything I was supposed to do. And by the end of my training, I had run something like 400 miles. And I think I've listened in your podcast. Tell me exactly how many miles you recommend for people to run to have as their base before they start training for a marathon.
Yeah, it is around 500
Yes.
that
Yeah.
we usually, recommend.
Yeah, so I was at 440 by the time I was ready to run the Detroit Marathon. I wasn't even at the base before
Right,
you would start to train for a marathon.
right. Your
So,
base training was basically your marathon training.
correct. I told Andy today, my husband, I said, it was like I was doing a couch to 26.2. Like, you don't do that. You can do a couch to 5K, but probably not a couch to 26.2. Um, So as I was training, they would say, "Hey, run this long run at your easy pace." And I was like, "I'm not going to run this at my easy pace. I'm going to push this mother, because I want to run this marathon as fast as I want to qualify for the Boston Marathon with my first marathon. Just show everybody how amazing I am." It was ridiculous. So I would run my long runs, like my slow pace is probably 10, 15. I would run my long runs at like a 9:15, 9-minute pace while I was training.
Yep,
so
yep.
so and I would do every run like that. Every run was as hard as I could push it. And about I would say week 15, I was noticing that after my runs I was like limping, like my hamstring wouldn't like move with my body. I don't know how to explain it. It's just like my staff would say when I would get to the office, like, you're limping, and I'm like, I'm fine, I'm fine. I just ran a hard race. Sorry, my light kind of went out there. I just ran a hard run, and so I'm just a little sore. And I didn't, in my mind, I didn't see this as a red flag. And also, I started noticing that it was really hard to sit in the car. So I had a lot of pain with sitting, and I ended up buying like a cushion for the seat in my car. And I just figured this was all part of the training. I didn't really realize that I was getting into trouble. So I ran my last long run before the taper, and that was 3 weeks before Detroit. And then I did sort of
Hold
kept.
on one second. Do you mind if I interject right here?
Oh, please do. Yeah, I'm just
No,
rambling, but
no,
yeah,
because
yeah.
you said so many things that I think are gonna be so helpful to everyone listening to this,
Okay, good.
honestly.
Okay.
Because you're not alone, first off. This is quite common, actually. Like, your trajectory and what you did. You had like a big why in why you started running, right?
Hmm.
And it was because you really wanted a healthier life, right? Like
Hmm.
you went
Yes.
through all of COVID, like on the front lines, you and your husband. Thank you, by the way, for like, I can't imagine and being a healthcare provider who actually wasn't on the front lines anymore and like treating in a clinic that I know a lot of like colleagues, but you guys were like literally in the hospital. So literally front lines. I can't imagine how stressful it was, right? Like everyone was going through stress of COVID. Like I don't think anyone listening to this right now doesn't think about like the stress they were under during that time. For you,
Right.
that was like 10x, 12x, 20x because you were literally right on the front lines. But you wanted to kind of make a change and you wanted to get rid of the alcohol first, and then it was pretty much turned to food, right? So then you needed to kind of lose some weight, right?
Hmm.
And that's how you were managing your stress. And now you wanted to turn to like healthier alternatives to help manage stress and to
Yeah.
get control of your life back. And we all wanted some sense of control during that time period, didn't we? Because
Hmm.
we didn't
Yes.
have any control, right? We had no clue what the heck was going on,
Yes.
right? We didn't know what this was going to end up as. We didn't know how it was going to affect our lives, our families, our jobs, our right. Like,
Hmm.
so you wanted some sense of control. So you took up running and you really started out and was like, oh, okay, I can do this and
Hmm.
started building up. And yeah, just for anyone listening to this right now, if you do that, we don't recommend going couch to marathon, but if or if it's your first marathon, you don't even need to do a 20 miler, by the way.
Yeah.
So
No
I just
kidding.
want to express that to everyone that
Yeah.
usually 18 is usually where we probably max out for someone's first marathon. So
Hmm.
just wanted to kind of jump in there and make that point and also acknowledge to you. I thought it was funny how you said that you literally did it the plan to a T because you could tell like you like get stuff done. Like you not only, want to become a doctor, but like you had to get two specialties, right? And
Yes.
not one, you
Yeah.
didn't want to be a specialist, but you had to get two
Yeah.
specialties.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you're an overachiever. I could see that. And
Yes.
you like followed the plan to a T, which it's good to follow a plan, but unfortunately, it wasn't the right plan for what you needed at that time for where your fitness level was and just being like new to running. And then can I just give a quick shout out to you because I remember when we had first met, you had told me that you started listening to the podcast and that you actually had a podcast as well that you
Hmm.
really produced more to share like patient stories of issues that women were struggling with and no one talks about, right?
Hmm.
And we've had a couple episodes on the Healthy Runner podcast about some, female related running problems. And if you don't mind, maybe just sharing briefly, if that is
Yeah.
possible, kind of like what's the most common issue that women runners are going to suffer from. And then, if you don't mind, I know you kind of have this batch of content, which I listened to and was like absolutely phenomenal. If people are struggling with those pathologies and those pain points and struggle points, where could they go to listen to some of those episodes that you have compiled?
Yeah, so my podcast is called Girl Problems, aptly named, and it is. I don't have a ton of episodes. I did a bunch, and then actually, as I did them and marketed them, my practice got so busy that it was actually hard to keep up with them. But I'm hoping eventually to get back to them. But I still refer my patients to them all the time. But they're on every platform, so they're on Apple, they're on Spotify, any podcast platform you can find it. But it's called Girl Problems, and uh, yeah, I had my attorney for my practice write up a consent, and so I consented patients to kind of answer questions for me. So I would interview, like as I'm interviewing them in the office, just like I normally would. I would say, "Hey, do you mind if I just record this with my iPhone?" And so when I record my educational segments within the podcast, I was using a microphone like you're using, but then I would splice in these uh, patient interviews in within the educational portions. And I think it actually did turn out very nicely. I had people listening to it all over the world, which is kind of exciting. So I would like to get back to it eventually, but props to you actually, because doing a podcast, even one episode, takes a tremendous amount of time between just the content itself and then editing it and marketing it and getting it out there. And I think one of the reasons why I did it is because I have the same conversation with a woman over and over and over again in the office. And I thought, it's not like I'm saying something unique here that's tailored specifically to this one patient. Well, I mean, I mean, I do tailor it to that patient, but there's so much that I say that's very repetitious. And I was like, I'd really like to just say, listen to this episode. This is going to really help you. And plus, then I don't forget. I mean, I also felt like it's kind of quality control because I might tell one patient this part of it, and I might tell another patient that part of it, and they don't necessarily get all of the information because you're in a doctor's office and things are moving fast and you've got questions and the doctor has questions and then prescriptions have to be sent, and so there's all kinds of moving parts. And so I said, after, I'll hand them a little card after this visit, listen to the episode on such and such. So it has been helpful from that standpoint. Now, regarding what I just had a patient come in my office the other day. She's a runner. She just ran the Akron Marathon this fall. And she said, look, I love to run, but when I run, every step I take, a little pee comes out, and that's called stress incontinence. And stress incontinence is basically leakage with cough, laugh, sneeze, running, jumping, bending, lifting, stepping off a curb, jumping on a trampoline. You hear all kinds of things. This is most correlated with childbirth. So, injury that happens at the time of childbirth, you might notice it happen immediately after and continue on the rest of your life, or it might have happened and you didn't realize there was an injury. And then over time, the urethra becomes weaker and weaker, and it just can't hold the urine back, basically. So stress incontinence is the number one complaint I get from runners, and the beautiful thing about that is that stress incontinence is the easiest thing for me to fix. And the most common way to fix it, and I would say what we consider the gold standard, is a mid-urethral sling. So this is a transvaginal mesh, and that's sort of a hot topic buzzword, and people go crazy when you say transvaginal mesh. But we have over 460 studies in our literature supporting the safety and efficacy of the mid-urethral sling. So I do a couple hundred of them a year, and there's very few complications, and it is incredibly successful. 95% satisfaction rate at 15 years. So unfortunately, there's a lot of people out there who would love to sue big companies that are, device companies that are putting out these slings and fill their pockets. Sorry, that was I'm
Yeah.
showing my biased
Yeah.
opinion here. But so there's a lot of money in trying to make transvaginal mesh look bad. But I wouldn't do it. I would not do it if I thought that I was putting people in harm's way. And I would recommend it to my mother, my grandmother, my sister, my daughters if they needed it. So for all those runners out there who leak with cough, laugh, and sneeze, I highly recommend a mid-urethral sling. And then obviously there's the stool issue, which I don't want to get into too much, but people can always message me or DM me if they want to. I have Instagram and Facebook, and so if you have any questions about uh, stool issues when you're running too, I can help with that. And
Man,
we've talked about that. You and I have talked about that.
yeah.
One of our more awkward Zoom calls. So,
Hey.
Dwayne,
Yeah, we talk about everything on our calls, right? No,
can
thank you for
I?
sharing that. Thank you for sharing that. And seriously, like as you were talking about this, I'm like, all right, I'm gonna need to get Mary back on the show to do a whole episode on like stress incontinence.
Hey,
But
man,
thank you for sharing that.
I'll be your wingman. I'll get on this show anytime you want.
Yeah, no, thank you for sharing that because I know it is a struggle for many runners. And like I mentioned, guys, that Mary had, and I give you so much credit. I told you this. How you really formatted your podcast does require a lot of editing, but it's literally true patience from their own mouth, like what's
Yes.
going on. And so if you are struggling with any of these issues, like go check out Girl Problems, see some of the episodes, and it will definitely be educational and informative. And I could definitely relate to what you mentioned about like saying the same thing over and over again, right? And like if
Yeah,
you think about our last call before your New York City Marathon, I gave you like a reading list. I gave you homework, right?
I
I was like,
know.
I want you to listen to this podcast, this one, in this order, because I knew it went more in depth than we could in our hour like one-on-one call, where I really wanted things to kind of sink in, and so you can be like fully prepared, whether it's like mentally, nutrition, prep wise, hydration, right? So I can definitely relate to wanting to create content that's evergreen, and that's what, even though like you said, your practice kind of expanded so much where you didn't have a lot of time to do a lot of episodes, but all of the content there is evergreen, and it's going to be
Right, right.
really helpful for so many people. So
Right.
I would
It
highly
really
recommend it.
it doesn't age with time. I mean, it might be a little outdated 20 or 30 years from now, but it's not certainly not outdated now. It actually I was thinking about this very topic or concept when I was listening to your 200th episode because Carolyn said something to you about, well, what would you say you can help more people with your podcast or with your practice? And I was like, come on, like that that's a no-brainer, man. And I knew you were like, well, absolutely, I would say my podcast. And I was like, yeah, like you could reach so many more people. And I mean, obviously you reached me. I'm not in Connecticut. I'm not going to your clinic, and you didn't help me that way. Which sort of, I guess, brings us back to how I found you in the first place. So to get through my running journey to Detroit, you said that I knew I did injure myself a week before, but I didn't decide not to run until the day before. So
Wow.
yeah, it
The day
sucked.
before.
It
Holy cow.
sucked. It
Talking
sucked.
about
No,
nerves.
no, I do have to say tell this story because this is so for any athlete or any runner out there, like this would be like your worst nightmare. Like this is why I had little PTSD heading into New York because so the last Sunday before the marathon, my husband and I went out to do my last 10-mile run. And he's like, Mare, I don't think you should do this. I think you should just take this easy. I don't, let's run slower. Let's do 5 miles instead of 10. I was, no, no, I'm doing this. So it's tightening up, my hamstrings tightening up. And then we get to mile 6, and all of a sudden it was like, twing, like I just felt a seizure in my hamstring and my glute muscle all at one time. Like I felt it. I don't know. I don't know what to say. A pop. It was just like it was like a violin string just snapped. Like it was bad, and it hurt like a mother. Like I could barely walk, and we were 4 miles out from the car, and he was like, "Okay, you go sit by the train track, and I'm gonna run back to the car and come back and pick you up." And I'm like laying on the ground when he gets back to me, and I'm like sobbing hysterically because I basically knew like it was over. But I, of course, didn't give up. I then spent the week before Detroit. I went to the stretch lab. I went to see a PT who did trigger point injections. I did Epsom salt baths. I did a heating pad. I did an ice bath. I did every single thing I could possibly think of. Then, because I'm a medical doctor and we know better than anyone else, and we can do things to ourselves that maybe we wouldn't do to other people, I packed with me to New York a big vial of Marcaine because I was like, it just kind of hurts right here. And if I just inject some Marcaine in there, then maybe I can squeeze it out. I can squeeze this run out. I know this is so bad.
Oh
Like
my
talk
goodness.
about, I mean, nobody's going to ever want to come see me as a doctor after they hear this episode. But I mean, I was definitely self-treating. So my son and I decided to drive up on Friday night to Detroit. My husband and my two girls were going to join us on Saturday night, and on Friday night we go out. We have this wonderful dinner. Saturday we get up. We go look at the University of Michigan because he was applying to college, and then we got back to the hotel in Detroit. And I'm literally, I don't know, I'm on the 30th floor, and I can see pretty much the entire course, like down straight out of downtown, across the bridge into Canada, up under the river. It comes out right at the bottom of my hotel. And I was just so excited about this marathon. But I'm like feeling in my heart like this, I don't think this is going to happen. Like I just don't think it's going to happen. So I'm walking around the hotel room. I decide that afternoon I have to do my last 2 mile like shakeout run. I haven't run all week. So I inject like 20 cc's of Marcaine into my hip.
my
And I'm
goodness.
I know. You're like, Mary,
You've
don't say
never
this.
told me this, by the way. You've
Of
never
course
told me
I
this.
didn't. Of course I didn't, because you would have responded just like you did when I told you I was giving myself trigger point injection or trigger point or dry needling myself. Yeah, because I dry needled myself, and you got mad at me for that too. So I go out and I'm like bouncing around my hotel room, and I'm like, ooh, this feels good. Like I can't feel anything. I think this is going to work. And then I go downstairs, I leave the hotel, and I start to run, and I literally get 20 feet, and the pain is excruciating. And I knew, okay, I'm done. Like, I can't run this marathon. So I go up to my hotel room, my son's sitting there, and I walk in the room, and he sees my face, and I'm crying, like tears running down my face. And he's like really quiet, and he's a talker. I bet that surprises you. Okay. Anyway, just kidding. So he's really really quiet, and I'm just like shoving things in my bag, and I'm like, we're going home, and um, he's like, Mom, can I just talk at you for a moment? And I was like, okay. And he's like, Mom, you've already ran the marathon. You've already run the marathon. You literally trained and ran 20 miles 2 weeks ago. He's like, or 3 weeks ago. He's like, you have done the work. He said, who cares about this race tomorrow? He's like, you don't want to run this race tomorrow because you're not at your best. He said, go home, train next year, come back and run it like a badass next year, the badass that you are. And I was like, like I raised this kid well, like he
Yeah,
really
you did.
he like saved me in that moment. And so we drove home, and I cried all the ways home. My husband was like beside himself, like because I called him and said, don't come to Detroit, like we're 3 hours away. And I was like, don't come to Detroit, we're coming home. So then I didn't do anything for a couple weeks. I was in a lot of pain, actually, maybe because of all the stuff I injected into myself, but also because of the pulled muscle. and then um, and then I decided I'm not going to give up. I'm definitely going to run a marathon, and I'm going to run Detroit next year. So in January, I hired a running coach, and I got involved with a physical therapist, a PhD in physical therapy, just like you, but he was not a running coach. So I had the running coach in one hand and the PT in the other hand, and I got signed up with her. And she's 29 years old, and I'm 49 years old, and so she's like, "Don't worry, we're gonna get you on a return to run. It's gonna be great." Well, literally like 2 weeks into my return to run, she was having me do like my Thursday short run was like 8 miles, and I was doing speed hills and all this stuff, and I injured myself right away again. Boom, like that. And so I was like, you know what? Probably hiring a 29-year-old like university runner who's never been in a 49-year-old's body yet probably wasn't the best idea. And she's great, don't get me wrong. She's
Right.
coached a lot of people to do great things, but I wasn't the one. So I started Googling. I self-diagnosed my proximal hamstring tendinopathy. I started Googling all the exercises I could do. I was trying to figure out a new run plan. I was trying to figure out what exercises. And then I came across your podcast, and it was one of the episodes on proximal hamstring tendinopathy. And your first thing was, "Are you a middle-aged runner?" And I was like, "Yes, yes, I am. I am a middle-aged runner with injuries." And like, just I started listening to your
Yeah.
episodes, and by the way, I've told you this before, but I only listen to podcasts on 1.5 times speed. So like, it's always very, very fast. And the first time I spoke with you, I was like, man, he speaks a lot slower than I thought he did. I was
That's
like,
amazing.
I know, I was like, because
It's
like
like, is he from the South? I thought
yeah,
Connecticut was like in the North. Like, why is he talking
yeah, I
so
know.
slow?
I was like, yeah, like one time I actually put you on regular speed, and I was like, whoa, like he's chill. Like I thought, I thought you were super like amped up, just in my own mind. But so then I got on your website, and I started, looking around your website and looking at what was on there, and then I started cyber stalking you a little bit, and figuring out like what your day job was, like, everything. And so then I decided, on your website, I can sign up for a call with you. And so before our call, I was driving to Indianapolis from Cleveland for a dance competition for my daughter. And I was listening to your podcast, like one episode after another. I think I listened to probably 10 episodes just on the drive down there. And um, yeah, I think the timing would work that I could do that. Anyway, and then I was the more I listened to you, the more I was convinced that I was your girl, like you were my guy, like this is we needed to work together. And B, I just was astounded by how you got it. Like you got it. You understood what you might as well have been in my brain. You knew the pain that I was in, physically, emotionally. You understood the drive to do what I wanted to do. Like I don't know how many times people said to me, "Well, what's the big deal? Like you're just putting this pressure on yourself. You don't have to run a marathon. You're already a successful surgeon. You've got a happy marriage. You've got 3 kids. You've got all these things. What do you need to run a marathon? You can run short distances. Why are you doing this?" But you understood why I would want to do this. And one of the things that you say all the time, the mind clearing miles, I think about that all the time when I'm running. I'm like, Dwayne would call this a mind clearing mile right now. Like, really, the running is saving me. It's saving me in many ways from the amount of stress that I'm under, the anxiety that I feel with my job, with raising teenagers, with being married to a physician who's busy and he's got his stresses, and aging parents, and whatever else. So running has given me that, and you gave it back to me. So I can stop rambling on now. Sorry. Do you have another question?
No, no, it's just thank you for, sharing honestly, and really kinda diving into what you were feeling during that time, like, during that low point, right? Like, before you actually booked the call with me, and
Yeah.
we got on the phone, and I distinctively remember, and I get on a lot of calls with people and I don't remember them all. Like I distinctively remember our call because I knew like 1,000% that
Mhm.
you were a good fit for how I help runners, and I knew that like I'd be able to help you be able to, you know, learn how to do this the right way, and that
Right.
you were willing to learn. And like
Right.
you've clearly, like you've already talked about, demonstrated, like you can implement, right? Like if you get the plan, like you're going to do it.
Right.
It's not a
Right.
motivation thing for you. Like,
Correct.
right. You're a doer.
Correct.
So I knew that like right off the bat. And I just am so happy that, we did find each other. And then going back to kind of the side here, but like the podcast, right? Like if I never made that episode on proximal hamstring tendinopathy, because I know how frustrating it was, because I had it, like that was the first running related injury that I got. And I realized even as a PT, I'm like, I didn't really know how to treat this because I wasn't seeing a lot of
Right.
long distance runners at that time in my clinical practice, in kind of a outpatient hospital based PT clinic. And I was like, there's not a lot of information out there. So like I wanted to help others because there's not a lot of information out there. And
Mhm.
yeah, I think so many people can honestly relate to, even if they don't have proximal hamstring tendinopathy, but they're having a frustrating injury like you were, and you were determined, like you wanted to run this marathon because you set a goal for yourself and you wanted to kind of do something, right, to like challenge yourself in this next chapter of your life journey, right? Like your kids are getting older, they're teenagers, and the whole COVID stuff, right, that was going on. So you were at this kind of low point. So we'll call that like part one of of kind of
Yeah.
pre
Yeah.
spark healthy runner. And
Yeah.
now let's talk kind of post us meeting and that call that we had. And I guess it didn't sound like there were, but were there any hesitations for you to even reach out and actually book a call? Or after we talked on the phone, did you have any hesitations about getting signed up for a one-on-one program?
Zero. I mean, my only fear was that you wouldn't take me on. As a matter of fact, I think the reason you probably remember our call was because I kept saying, I know that I am the right person to be training with you. Like I thought I felt like more like I was being interviewed for a job than you were being interviewed for a job. I mean, I was like, God, please, please take me. Please, please see that you can fix me. I had zero hesitation. I 0. I mean, really, like, I think I jokingly told you recently, like I mean, I paid for the rehab program with you, the restore program with you, the 16 weeks, and then we went on, and I ended up paying. Or I'm not trying to be vulgar by saying paying you, but I hired you, I guess I should say, to coach me to New York, and I said, my kids might not go to college, but I am going to run this marathon. You know? Just because I also took off quite a bit of time from the operating room, like pre and post the marathon, and any surgeon will tell you, like you got to be in the operating room to generate your revenue, really. And so I did take off quite a bit of time at the pre and post marathon, like at least a week or two. But so yes, graciously agreed to take me on as a client, and then but just before we talked, one of the nurses in the OR had convinced me to enter the lottery for New York. And I didn't know anything about the New York City Marathon. I didn't know anything about marathons in general. I just figured, oh, it's a city and each city has a marathon. I didn't I didn't understand that a marathon could be a harder marathon or an easier marathon, a flatter marathon, a hotter, a colder marathon. Like I didn't look at the New York City Marathon and go, well, I think it's going to be a little harder because there's five ginormous bridges. And, by the way, the first week of November, it might be kind of 63 degrees, I mean, like I didn't take any of that into account. And I thought, oh, that sounds like fun. I didn't know it was the largest marathon in the world. I didn't know
Hmm.
that it takes 3 hours to get to the start line and you have to go by yourself and none of your family members can go with you. I didn't know that you had to wear clothing and throw it in a bin because you might need it before you run, but you can't take it with you. I mean, I didn't know any of these details. So I just go online and I signed up and boom, my credit card was charged. And I was like, oh, I guess I'm running the New York City Marathon. And then you, and then I said, okay, I'll go back and do Detroit maybe later, but if I get into New York City, I'll do New York City. It sounds really cool. So then you and I got started right away on the 16-week restore program, and I was anxious because in the beginning I still had pain. You were telling me what exercises to do, and we were working through not only regular run of the mill, if you will, runner's strength exercises, but you were also doing specific exercises designed for me for the injury that I had, working on that hamstring tendon loading, that proximal hamstring tendinopathy, strengthening my hip stabilizers, and we were slowly running again, and I was still having pain, and I was like, oh, I hope this works. I hope I'm not the one person that like this isn't going to work for. And it took a long time, Dwayne, during that time period, that 16 weeks. I mean, I did feel so much better by 10 weeks. By 16 weeks, I ran my 10 miles. I think you had me run 10 miles the last couple runs
Yes.
yeah,
Yep.
I ran 10 miles and I was like, I'm running this. I don't feel the heaviness in my hip. I'm not limping after my runs, and it really honestly worked. And so, but that didn't exactly, I think, are have they done like personality studies on runners? Are we like all type A, or are there like I
I'm
don't
pretty
even.
sure almost everyone is.
Okay, okay,
I've done
okay.
an informal
Yeah.
informal study, and I
Informal,
would tell you
yeah,
that pretty much
yeah, yeah.
anecdotally.
Informal survey. Are you? Yeah, I am. You too. Okay. So, and my husband is. So I just was still kind of nervous about the marathon training, and so when we got to the end of our 16 weeks, you were like, okay, so now that you're good, we got you pain free. Like, I think we can move you off to one of my other coaches. And I was like, oh hell no, that's not happening. And I remember you telling me that at, like, I mean, not to say I am going to move over to one of your coaches now, but at the time when you were kind of hinting that that might happen, I was like, he's got another thing coming if he thinks that I am not going to train for New York with him. I was he crazy? I got to all the way to Detroit. And so, yeah. So then we got on that call, and thank God you were like, you saw my face probably when you were like, so what do you think? And I was like, mm-mm. Like Do you remember? I was like, we're definitely,
You're my guy.
you're my God. We're,
We're
and I,
working together.
yeah, I'm like, you're
I'm
getting me
like, yes, Mary, we
you're,
are working together. No.
you're getting me, you're getting me to New York, man. Okay. You're getting me to New York. And then the training, I don't know, you can tell me more about the training than I can tell you about the training. I mean, it's, first of all, if for
Yeah, I
anybody,
guess if from what I'm hearing from you, those first 16 weeks to kind of get you pain free, if I'm understanding you correctly, your perception in the beginning was kind of like, I'm not sure if this is going to work because I still
right,
have some pain. Like my
right,
pain isn't totally gone right away. And this isn't like the quick fix that I would like if I
right.
just were to inject myself with a pain analgesic.
I didn't
So
even tell
it
you about
sounded
the,
like you were a little skeptical, but by
yeah.
the 16 weeks, it sounded like you were like, almost a little surprised, like, oh my goodness, I just did like a double digit long run and I didn't have pain. And
Yeah.
wow, I am feeling like stronger. And I remember you had told me that at that point in time where you were feeling stronger, you were running consistently without pain again. And now you were officially ready to kind of start to build up
Hmm.
for New York. And the marathon training, we'll call it, because I was kind of
Hmm.
that training block. Um, and I guess, just working together. Maybe just if you can share almost like a peek behind the curtain, like what does that look like, or like what was like most helpful for you
Oh
in
yeah.
getting guidance and like working together during either the first 16 weeks or the second 16 weeks?
Well, I will tell you, really, for me, the first and the second 16 weeks kind of blend together. Um, Obviously, my confidence is way up in the second 16-week block because now we're truly training for the marathon. And but I will tell you that the number one thing that you provided me. Okay, wait. There's a lot of things, but first off, just the plan, the strength training combined with the running plan that you made for me is huge. Okay, so that right off the bat, I felt like, okay, this is my plan. This isn't his plan because I'm listening to your podcast knowing that's not what you're doing. I'm watching your Instagram posts and going, hey, wait a second, how come he's doing 50 plus miles this week and I'm only doing 36? Like I knew we weren't on the same plan, let's put it that way. But so I knew that it was designed for me, my first marathon for somebody who's just recovering from an injury. But Dwayne, you personally, the thing that you provided for me that I'm so grateful for you and why sometimes I say to Andy, I kind of love Dwayne and he's like, I know you do, honey. Like is because I'm sort of in love with Dwayne. Like, no, just kidding. I'm not in love with you. I mean, I love you, but I love you a lot, but not
Not in
in
that
love with
way.
you. Not now. Anyway, is that you, when I was down, when I was feeling down during training, or I was questioning myself, or I was questioning a niggle, as you like to say, or some of your people like to say when they come on your podcast, a niggle. If I'm feeling a niggle and I'm worried about it and I'm obsessing about it, or I'm feeling a little depressed because I'm tired or I'm worn out or whatever it is, you would seem to always swoop in at the right time with an email, a text, or a call that brought me right back up again. And that is huge because marathon training is amazing. But it is all encompassing. It is so intense. It is so, it's your life for those 4 months. And, as you pointed out, you're giving up some social things. You're eating differently potentially, you're going to bed earlier, you're sacrificing some time with your family, all these things. Still wonderful. It's all wonderful. But like to have you step in at times and say, this is all normal, Mary, this is normal. Like even sometimes I was like, he's talking to me like I'm going off the deep end, and I am going off the deep end a little bit. So I'll own it, but yeah, like I think just having you there as the knowledgeable person who's been through this a bunch of times, who's coached a lot of people, who works with a bunch of coaches, just to have your knowledge and your reassurance, that was huge.
Yeah, and I remember distinctively one of those time periods was when I was doing my East Coast trip, and I was with my daughter in Savannah, Georgia.
Yeah.
I went out for a nice run in Savannah. It was like, checking out the sights, the trees. It's beautiful. And then you sent me a message, and I remember distinctively the Airbnb that we rented. I was on the stairs doing my little calf stretch, and I saw your text, and I was like, all right. Yeah, this deserves a call. And I was like,
Yes.
let's hop on a call because you felt like terrible from your
Yes.
long run that you did
Yes.
in the Caribbean with like the
Yes.
dew point,
Yes.
extremely, extremely high. And you were wondering, like, basically, you felt defeated, like that your long run felt like garbage. And, you started probably second, guessing everything that can I even run a marathon and all. And I was
Yeah.
like, but wait, it was this. And wait, you didn't hydrate and you didn't do electrolytes. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, I
Yeah.
remember one of those days because I remember being in that Airbnb talking to you.
Yes.
And I was like, okay, this is normal. Yes, you're supposed to feel like your run is absolutely terrible in St. Thomas. Like,
Yeah, like the
yes,
dew point
you
was
were
like
running through thick air.
yeah, the dew point was like 76. It was 83 degrees. My husband and I are running in the wind and the rain and the sun along like in St. Thomas, there's only a 1 or 2 mile stretch where you can run on the entire island. Okay. So we're running back and forth on the cement right next to the ocean in the wind, in the rain, in the, you know, and it was like the dew point was 76. And at one point, my husband, who's a big time runner, was like, Mare, I mean, you may be feeling great, but I don't think I'm gonna make it all 8 miles. I'm getting ready to stop. And we were 4 miles in. I was like, no, we can't stop. And that run, I ended up jumping off the wharf into the ocean, and then because I was like so overheated, and then I like the next day I went to this. I go to this gym, locally owned gym there when I'm down there, um, and the guy, I know the owner, and I told him, I'm like, yeah, yesterday I tried to run out, and I'm running on the treadmill, but I said to him, I tried to run outside yesterday down by the down in Charlotte Amalie, and I got so hot I ended up having to jump in the water right off the wharf. And he goes, no, don't tell me that. Don't tell me you did that. Nobody swims there. There's boats there. That's deep. I was like,
My goodness.
seems safe to me. I don't. He's like,
Oh my
no.
goodness.
He's like, have you ever seen anybody in the water down there? And I was like, come to think of it, no.
Oh
But I
my
loved it.
goodness.
There's actually a picture of me on my Instagram and Facebook of me in the water at that moment. My husband wouldn't get in with me. He was really mad at me that day for jumping in the water by the
Oh my
cruise
goodness.
ships. I don't think a cruise ship could
Yeah.
really. I mean, I think I could swim faster than a cruise ship, don't you? I mean,
No. No.
that's what
So
he said too.
during this second kind of marathon training block that we did, um, were you surprised by anything that you were able to do, like leading up to the marathon in terms of like training wise?
Yeah, yeah. I think one of the runs that stands out, and you sent me in Final Surge, you sent me a message that you were like, "Holy smokes!" Um, you had me do a 5 mile tempo run. It was my longest. It was my longest tempo run in the sense that I did 3 miles straight at tempo pace. And what did I do it at? Like an 8:30 or an 8:15 pace or something
Yep.
like that. And like
Mm-hmm.
like I I just was like I was like a locomotive that day. It was just like all the stars were aligned. Like I felt good. I had my fluids. I had some goo or UCAN or whatever, and I stopped. I did my 1 mile warm up or 2 mile warm up. I can't remember what it was now, and it was a 2 mile warm up, probably a 2 mile
It's
warm
probably
up. A
two.
6 mile run then. It was a 6 mile
Mm-hmm.
run with a 2 mile warm up and a 1 mile cool down and 3 mile tempo.
Yes.
And I did my 2 miles and then I stopped after 2 miles. Did like some I did, just a little bit of whatever warm dynamic stuff, dynamic stretching, and then a little bit of strides. And then I just started, and I don't know if the right songs were playing on my AirPods or what, but like I just got into I don't normally run that fast, but I got into that pace and I literally felt like I was just a locomotive, literally. And I remember you like going bananas when you saw that run, and I felt amazing after that. Like that was so yeah, that was surprised me. And then the half marathon, because you had me do the half marathon.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
so I did the Cleveland Rock and Roll Half Marathon as part of my training run, and you and I had a call Thursday right before the run, and you said, "Okay, Mare, I want you to, um, you can't go faster than a 9 minute mile or whatever for the first 3 miles." And
Yes.
I was like, I don't even know that what is he talking about faster than 9 minutes? Like, I'm not going to run this half marathon anywhere. Like, why would I ever go faster than 9 minutes? Like, I'm like thinking, no, he's insane. Mind you, now, right? Because I've never done any rail races. Okay. So I've never
Right.
even done a half marathon. So, then you're like, okay. And then for like, the working miles, where you're just kind of cruising, I want you to go like from mile 4 to 10, like don't no faster than 8:45, and then the last 3 miles, the race is on, go for it, do whatever you want. And all weekend long, I'm depressed. I'm like, Dwayne is out of his mind. Um, there is no way I can run this fast, and this is going to be a major disappointment. Which is also stupid, right? Because it's my first half marathon. How could it ever be a disappointment? Just running a
Right.
half marathon. How could
Right.
running a half marathon be a disappointment? It's a real mind game. I want to say a mind, but I won't because this is a family friendly podcast. But that's what training is, right? And so, you and I both know that I crushed that half marathon, and I only came in like a few minutes after my husband. He said he got done and he crossed the finish line, and he's like, well, I just got to see where Mare's at, make sure she's okay. And he's like, oh damn, I got to get back to the finish line because she's like right on my heels. So he was it was exciting. So those are the two very memorable moments from my training for the marathon. The marathon itself, of course, is the
Yeah.
biggest moment. But
And if I could summarize there, it was just so great to be able to see you like get out of pain, right? Get consistent running, but then also challenge yourself to like do harder speed work and like hard
yeah,
marathon training,
yeah,
honestly. But you were ready for it. And I knew you were ready for it
yeah.
because you
Because
had put
that's
the work in, the
yeah.
consistency, and it was just so great to like be able to see that. And if you can lastly, just share, what was like the best moment in New York and like, or running your first marathon.
Um, can I just finish one more thing from what you were just
Of
saying real quick?
course.
I know, I'm sure we're running out of time, but
Yeah.
but I know that you've gone over before, so we can. I don't even know how. Okay, so what I was going to say is that is the whole point, is that you encouraged me. You said you've been doing the work and you can do this. This is a lesson that I know to be true in my professional life, right? So, how many exams have I taken? How many, for example, I trained for 4 years as an OBGYN before I went to fellowship. How many C-sections had I done? So that then my attendings would say, look, you've put in the work. You've done C-sections at 3 in the morning. You've done C-sections in an emergency situation. You know how to do a C-section when you graduate. Like you're good. You've got the training. You study for an exam, a calculus exam, a biology exam, whatever. You put in the time, you're going to do well. And as long as you don't choke, which choking is that you're not remembering that you put in the work, right? And so that's how I felt. Like you always reminded me, you've put in the work. And how I felt during the marathon so by the time I got to the start line in New York, I was a little nervous because I already felt hot at the start line. It was a very warm day. It wasn't as warm, I guess, as it was last year, but I like to run 47 to 52 degrees outside. It was already like 59, 60 when I was at the start line for New York. So I already felt warm, and so I was a little nervous about that. And the other thing was I made the decision not to run with my pack, which I thought I'd never done that before. And I thought, well, yeah, I'll be okay because there's fluids every mile. What I did not anticipate about New York, I didn't anticipate, even though there's 50,000 people running with me, somehow I didn't anticipate the crowd. I didn't anticipate trying to dodge people. I didn't anticipate the heat somehow that would be generated with all those people around me. Like, I mean, I'm sure it wasn't them. I'm sure it was me running in the heat outside, but it was just like I felt hot a lot during the marathon. But my legs felt good. My Achilles tendons felt good. I did not cramp up, but by mile 21 I was very dehydrated. Even after just getting water for, every run, every stop I would get water. And by the end, every stop I was getting a glass of Gatorade and a cup of Gatorade and a cup of water. I was pouring them down together and just downing it. And I just couldn't. I was already behind. Like once I was dehydrated, I was behind. So from a learning standpoint, I know how I will do it a little bit differently with future marathons. I probably, if it's warm like that, I probably will run with a pack. I was kind of hallucinating towards the end there, but I think that what I would say that I think surprised me the most about the marathon was the mind game. Um, I you get sucked down this negative thought process so quickly as you get more and more tired. And I remember my husband was supposed to meet me at 17 miles, but he could not get on the subway to get to that point. So I'm scouring the crowd, as I'm running, which is hard to do because you're trying to run and stay focused, but you're looking for your loved ones amongst thousands of screaming New Yorkers. And literally from mile 16 to the Bronx, I was looking for him and couldn't find him. And I was like, I just need a hug from Andy right now. I just need a hug from Andy. And like, I didn't get it. And so when I crossed into the Bronx, I was starting to feel despair. And some lady, as I'm coming out of the Bronx, says, only 4 more miles. And I was like, 4 more miles? Like, how am I going to do that?
The thing
Are
you
you
never want to hear
I was
while
like,
you're running a
I
marathon.
know. I was like, are you kidding me? As a matter of fact, when I saw 800 meters, I was like, isn't that like 2 laps around a track? Like, I can't do this. I had 800 meters left. That's it. And I was like, so your brain really tricks you. My mantras were, I think I can, I think I can, I think I can, because I always loved that book. And my other one was your brain or your mind gives out faster than your body. And every time I would think, I have to stop, I have to stop, I would think, why do I have to stop? My body actually feels okay. It's just your brain is just telling you you're dehydrated. You need to stop. You shouldn't be doing your brain is literally trying to protect you from yourself, it but you really can run 4 more miles. You know what I mean? I don't know. So
Hmm.
that was what I kind of. But New York was amazing. My husband was there. My 2 daughters, my son, and 3 of his buddies who I'm close with were all there. And having them there was it was just the most special weekend. We went out to dinner the night before. I had a very, very benign spaghetti dinner with bread and no butter and just water the night before, and but had just a lovely dinner with the 7 of them, and they all ran around New York trying to follow me in the marathon, and then they were at the end waiting for me. And my son said as we're getting on the subway, he said, "Mom," and he's not a runner, he's a freshman at Ohio State University. He said, "Mom, if uh, if Gavin and I train, Gavin's his buddy, if Gavin and I train for a marathon, will you run it with us?" And I was like, hell yes, I will. Are you kidding me? Like that's what I wanted. I mean, that's why I wanted them there. I wanted them to see this, that you could take a 49-year-old woman who's not a runner, who's busy doing all these other things, but had this goal, train for the goal, prepare for the goal, crush the goal, and then inspired them to do it, just like my husband inspired me. And I think that was like the cherry on top. When he said that to me, I wanted to cry. I didn't actually cry, by the way, until I talked to you like 3 days later. That's the first
I
time I.
know that that was good. You needed to get all those emotions out, by the way.
Yeah, yeah.
You did.
Yeah, I
And I
cried.
I love I love that your son said that, and yeah, you've inspired him, and I'm really hoping that by you sharing your story today, that you've inspired probably hundreds of runners, maybe even thousands, right?
I hope
That
so.
if they're questioning, whether they should continue running, or if they think that they're getting too old for running, or they're had an injury and they're trying to train and they keep getting injured. Like, I hope they can resonate with a portion of your story and know that, like, there are ways to get over these things, right? And that you can overcome the obstacles. You just need to find the right path.
Hmm.
So,
Anybody
thank you
can.
for like
Yeah.
allowing me to be that guide to get you on that
Oh,
path. Honestly, it's been
yeah.
such a joy working with you. I joked with you. I was like, I think you're probably the most mentioned person ever on the podcast. So I'm like, I have to bring you on the podcast because like everyone's heard this Mary person. So now you guys know every time I mention Mary in an episode, this is Mary. You can see she's an incredible woman. And it's just been so fun like watching your journey,
Thank you.
and I really appreciate you sharing your story and your journey with us today.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dwayne. I owe you so much. I've told you this before. Like, honestly, the fee that I pay you was nothing. The service that you provided was priceless. Let's put it that way. What was that commercial? Like, the cost of training with Dwayne it equals this. The benefits from training with Dwayne are priceless. I don't know. Running the New York City Marathon is priceless, and um, and uh,
Exactly.
my husband and I actually just entered the lottery for Chicago. So I
Oh,
don't know. He's run
that'd
it
be
before.
amazing.
I know he's
That'd
run
be
it
amazing
before.
if we could all run it together.
I know that you did too. And he's like, "Do you want to do Chicago?" And I was like, "Yes." And so my long-term goal over the next decade or 2 decades potentially would be to do the Big Six if I can, just because
Mm-hmm.
I just think it. And I didn't even know what the Big Six were, by the way, until like 2 weeks before the New York City Marathon. Like one of my residents, we were operating in the operating room. She's like, "So, Dr. South, you going to do the Big Six?" And I was like, "What the hell are you talking about?" And she's like, like who's like signed up for world's biggest marathon and doesn't know what the big six
Right.
marathons are?
Right.
I was like me because I didn't do any research on any of this, but yeah,
You're
well,
like, is
anyway.
that a college basketball conference? Like,
I know,
like
I know. I
what's
was
the
like,
Big Six?
I know, it's terrible. But yeah, Dwayne, I owe you the world. I really do. I really highly recommend you to everybody. I give your name out to everybody. I've given your name out to a GI doctor in my area. I really, 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 you've given me the biggest gift, and it really has meant a lot to me. And um, I just, I can't recommend you enough.
Oh, well,
I love
thank you. I greatly appreciate it, as you know.
you.
And like I say, I'm the lucky one because I get to work with people just like you. And yeah, you bring me those gifts that, I'm making a difference and
Mhm.
impacting runners in a way, quite frankly, that I really wasn't able to impact when I was working kind of in the clinic model.
Yeah.
So the impact that I'm able to have and feel that gratitude for what I do and is just more meaningful and enriches my life. So thank you for allowing me to do that. I appreciate that. And if you guys really resonate with Mary's story and you're ready to take action and get like accountability, get the exact clarity that you need to kind of focus on in getting unstuck, right? Or, reaching your greatest potential as a runner, like Mary, then, you can get stronger, run faster, become a lifelong injury free runner with our Healthy Runner coaching program. You can get a behind the scenes video tour of our coaching program, hear from other clients just like Mary, by just going to learn.sparkhealthyrunner.com/coaching. And as always, runners, let's maintain a strong mind, a strong body, and let's just keep on running. Until next time.
Thanks.